A game engine is the basic software that is used by video game developers to design and create their games. A game engine is optimized for the many different platforms used to play games, from the basic consoles like the Xbox and PlayStation to the more complicated PCs and even the simple mobile phones like Apple, Android and Windows.
What components make a game engine? One of the components of a game engine is a renderer, which supports the use of graphics in your game and gives you the ability to actually see what the game would look like and gives you a visual idea of how the appearance or amount of polygons on your 3D object affects gameplay along with other various assets.
Game engines provide an entire package that you can use to create games. This includes render engines, sound engines, a physics engine, and more. There are usually 4 different types of game engines used to make a game, and the category types are as follows: 2D, 3D, mobile, and game mods. The game engine is also responsible for such things as physics, AI, collisions, and particle effects. Some engines, however, focus on specific features in games that aren't as good as they could be in typical game engines. For example, Havok is a standalone physics engine that can be licensed out to developers to aid the game physics. Game engines can be used to store data from assets to sound, but they can also be used even after the game has been released. Game engines are also used by all the developers of a game, as they have to take and put information into the engine. They will share floor plans and textures, assets, and even reference imagery between each other so that they can create a game that flows smoothly through the design pipeline. A game engine lays a software framework to build and create video games. They provide features from animation to artificial intelligence. Game engines are responsible for rendering graphics, collision detection, memory management, and many more options.
Networking. This is used to support the online connectivity in games, such as adding online combat in FPS games.
Numerous things can make game engines popular. The vast array of free engines, UDK, Unity, etc. They have plenty of assets to buy or collect and implement into your own games. Game engines are also highly adaptable and let the user create vast mods that can even be larger than the original game themselves.
Physics. The physics is how your 3D models react in an environment and makes sure that the objects and environment should react the way they should, and also includes features such as collision detection.
What rendering techniques are there? Real time. Used for interactive media, games and simulations. It is calculated and displayed in real time, approximately 20 to 120 frames per second. On the other hand, we have baked rendering. This is pre-baked rendering done before the game runs. This allows better performance and avoids any unnecessary artifacts that come with real-time rendering.
Input. This is usually used for things such as the controller and keyboard configuration. For example, this helps making sure that the right button or configuration is used depending on what your character does in a game. There's the sound. The sound is used for environments, objects and effects and is used to make the game feel more immersive. What is middleware? Middleware is essentially an extra, separate engine to support the main ones used for video games. These engines are usually rented to support a certain game's needs, such as the management of movement and physics within a game. For example, the Havok engine was used for Destiny to support the physics, scripts and cloth materials within the game. Scripting. This is used for coding in a game's engine and it's used to make sure that everything happens at the right time, place and order. What is graphics rendering? Graphics rendering is the way in which the graphics are produced on the screen. For example, when you're making a model on a 3D program, you're essentially looking at a variety of mathematically placed points and surfaces to make the basic structure of the environment or object you want to make. When this is rendered, those points and surfaces are calculated to give you the finished look of that environment or object. How is sound dealt with? Even though most people would think that sound is an easy thing to add to a game engine, it can easily be the opposite depending on the complexity of the game. For games such as Skyrim and Fallout, the sound needs to be hugely focused on. This is because in order to increase the amount of realism in a game, the sound needs to change depending on the environment, situation and distance from a sound. Examples of this are in games such as Call of Duty, where you need to hear closely for enemy movement and gunshots.
how game engines evolved. The very first 2D game engine was created for pinball. It was created in 1983 and was called the Pinball Construction Set, and this was the first integration of a game engine in a 2D game. It was developed for the Apple II and ported to the Atari 8-bit family and the Commodore 64 in 1983. What is level of detail? Level of detail is how important an object is, like a main character's model, and how many polys they used, and how heavy the textures are on an object. Such as, in a first-person game, your gun is right up against the player's face, so it has a high poly count and probably the best textures in the game. However, objects that aren't as close have a lesser poly count and probably has a basic texture added. What is modding? Modding can be used by giving out the engine to the players and allowing them to go through the game's code, textures, assets, and even script, and edit all of it. This is called modding. Modding or modifying is changing the software created to be something new or edit something that was existing. Examples would be changing in-game textures at HD to 4K, or replacing a dragon roaring to a train honking. What is world navigation? World navigation is how an NPC can get from point A to point B using tools and methods of travel, such as in a game process maps, so no matter what an NPC do, they will find their way out of a cave, and if they stumble across dead ends, they go back and keep trying different paths until they actually reach the required destination.